Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here. Let's get it Star Wars. Let's get it Star Wars in here.
A small rebel force has penetrated the shield and landed on Endor.
This is where the fun begins.
A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away.
This is Rebel Force Radio,
your source for the Force.
Star Wars news and commentary
With Jason Swank and Jimmy Mack.
I've seen Star Wars 500 times.
Star Wars #1.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe. I suggest we use it.
Now it's time for Rebel Force Radio.
We would be honored if you would join us.
All right, welcome back to Rebel Force Radio. I like to think of this as RFR Classic as the flagship show returns. Not that we weren't doing anything, we were doing lots. We had 2 brand new series, new seasons, new series to talk about with Bad Batch Season 2 and Mandalorian Season 3. Hope you were all listening to those after shows. What a great time we did those. And plus, we got caught up on Star Wars Celebration. We did a couple of shows with all the news that was breaking out of London, Celebration Europe, and then we did a call-in show for May the 4th. So we've been having so much fun doing these live shows. I hope that you've been enjoying them as well. They're certainly not going away. We'll be doing them and talking about that later on. But we're going to continue doing both formats. We'll do the podcast that you've come to know and love over the last decade and a half, as well as sprinkle in those live shows so we can get together and listen to your calls and all that stuff. So stay tuned. We got lots of stuff to discuss this week. We've got Tony Gilroy in the news. The big writer's strike. Is that going to impact Andor Season 2? We'll find out. Also, Dave Filoni talking to Empire Magazine. That's right, Dave. He's the guy that everybody wants to talk to. I remember when it was just the Clone Wars and he had to slum it on podcasts like Rebel Force Radio, but now he's in the big time. He's got some quotes that I think are pretty interesting. Also, our princess, Carrie Fisher, got a star on the Walk of Fame. We've got some video highlights of that, as well as an audio mystery has been solved. And Jimmy Mack will be bringing you all of those details. That and just so much more here on Rebel Force Radio. So glad to be with you. Thanks for hanging out with us. I mentioned him before, but of course, when I say Jimmy, I'm talking about my good friend and yours from Chicago, Jimmy Mack.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Star Wars fans. Back in the saddle again. RFR Classic, if you will. The weekly RFR returns for the first time since February. That's quite a while. So if there's some rust on the gate, please forgive Swank. But I'm ready to go. I've been hosting Patreon. shows. We've been having a good time with the Babu Freaks, RFR Q&A, and of course RFR RPG, which has reached new heights of insanity as the adventures of podcasters continue to unfold. Full show video. There's also the Patreon RFR Hang. The latest one has been announced. All the details at patreon.com/Rebel Force Radio, but you have to belong to a tier to access. So we suggest you find the tier that works best for you. As I like to say, only $1 and you're listening to our bonus podcast. So that's on Patreon. I don't want to have to dwell too deep on Patreon here at the beginning of the show, but I like people to know that on weeks when RFR is taking the time off or the podcasts aren't coming at you fast and furious enough with the weekly show, there's stuff going on Patreon for sure. So the more the merrier. Join us over there. Great RFR community. And what a great night to be back in the saddle again here for the weekly RFR.
Well, it's not like we weren't doing anything. I mean, we were doing the after shows. My God. 2 a week in some cases.
I'm saying. And of course, last week was May the 4th. And
right.
That was action-packed.
Did a live show.
I got so much Star Wars going on. It's ridiculous. I've been taking time to get caught up with the Star Wars Marvel comics. This book, Star Wars Timelines. Jedi Survivor, and
how's that
even watching? Jedi Survivor?
Survivor, yeah.
Well, I'm about 20 hours in.
Okay. All right. Added
20
another
hours
5
in.
hours since last week. We're keeping track.
Yeah. It's been a lot of time in Grizz's bar. So, I mean, this is really a video game for me. Grizz's bar, where sometimes the libations aren't always digital, but they're analog.
You know, I saw a headline. Since you brought up Jedi Survivor, I got to look at this because I'm sure you've experienced this 20 hours in. But they're making a big deal over the fact here that Jedi Survivor finally takes us into a Star Wars bathroom. Now,
it does.
Rebel Force Radio was the first to take you into a Star Wars bathroom via audio. So we've done that. But as far as actually taking video or photos of inside a bathroom, they're making a big deal. So here we go. Let's look at this. This is why you got to be an All Access member. You can get the full show video here. Here it is, folks. Yeah. This is a Star Wars turlet. In case you were wondering, this is the refresher.
Doesn't look any different than any other toilet. I mean, this is supposed to be able to accommodate the appendages of all sort of alien creatures. I mean, it's the same old toilet we see here on Earth, you know. Maybe it's a little bit more teched out. When I went to Japan, they had teched out toilets. They were fantastic. They did all kind of things.
The thing I don't see is the dispenser where you can get those sanitary covers that you put on there. I mean, I'm looking at this. I mean, I see obviously that's where you're going to blow dry your hands or your flippers or whatever you've got in the Star Wars universe. But the toilet, I mean, does it spray you clean? What's going on with that?
Yeah, it seems like maybe it's a high-grade airplane toilet, you know, like those weird airplane toilets that the bowl is made of metal and it's built into the wall. And when you press flush, it goes. I think that's what it's like. But yeah, I've been there. I've been into this bathroom a couple of times at Grizz's bar.
What's in there? What are you going to go? I mean, does your character have to use it?
No, he has yet to use it. He does wash his hands, though. He does wash his hands. Yeah, he washes up. But I got news for you, man. This is not the first bathroom we've ever seen in Star Wars. Now, come on. I don't know. Do you remember the game Dark Forces?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, it goes like all the way back to the beginning of the modern history of the Star Wars video game.
I got that free with my first computer. I had a Hewlett-Packard computer, and it was, and it came with it. And I played around with it a little bit, you know, and loved it because it was Star Wars, and it was, you know, it was 1995, so
right on.
That was dark times, except for video games, role-playing games, books, I guess. But
I beat that game. I played it every Saturday morning for like 9 months. It took me forever to. I didn't get any hints or cheat codes or anything. It's a very hard game.
Just on Saturdays, though.
Saturday mornings, yeah. It's the only time I had time.
As discipline.
Yeah, well, like I said, it was the only time I had time all week. And so I love Dark Forces. And in one of the earliest levels, Kyle Katarn goes to an Imperial base and he walks into the bathroom. And stormtroopers are standing there facing the wall, you know, using the urinals and stuff. And it's there's nothing graphic really about what he sees in there. It's like it doesn't go to some cut scene of a stormtrooper relieving himself, but that happens.
So Kyle Katarn goes into the bathroom, but there's nothing remarkable or fantastical about the bathroom. It's not
as interactive as the bathroom in Grizz's cantina. Okay. Because there you can flush the toilet and wash your hands, and I think something else happens in there too. I'm not allowed to say, but but I mean, it's hardly the first bathroom we've ever seen in Star Wars. I mean, for crying out loud, there's already a nickname for them in the Star Wars universe: refreshers. They already have their own name.
Well,
And
yeah,
then
but I think they were saying that this is the first time it had been visually shown. But as you point out, not so. Goes back to Dark Forces and
in The Mandalorian, the very first episode, Horatio Sands goes into the restroom on board the Razor Crest. I'm molting.
Was that really a bathroom, or was that just sort of a porta potty sitting there? I mean, it wasn't really a bathroom. I mean, it had a toilet. You know,
It had a toilet.
Did you ever have that friend who had the toilet in the basement, but it was just sitting there like in the middle of the basement? Wasn't really a bathroom. Gross.
Yeah, it was. Well, of course, on the ship, they probably refer to it as the lavatory.
Oh,
Lavatory. When I was a kid, they used to talk about the lavatory on an airplane, and I thought it was like Grandpa Munster underneath the steps, you know, with his potions in the laboratory.
No, that was laboratory.
No.
Laboratory.
Lavatory.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, let's
so I
check
went
in
there
with some
There
listener
were experiments
feedback.
going on the last time I was in there, though, let's just say.
You must contact me.
Play back the entire message.
What message?
Message after the message.
The Emperor commands you to make contact with him. It's a trick. Send no reply.
Hey, Jason. Hey, Jimmy. It's a Patreon supporter, Ryan, up in Ottawa. I had a question about, I wanted your thoughts on Expanded Universe. I was a diehard Expanded Universe guy back in the original run. Even read all 25 New Jedi Order books. But after that, when they rebooted the Expanded Universe, I really fell out of love with it. I said, maybe this is my time to jump off. I don't feel like getting into an entire new canon. And I notice over in the world of Star Trek, they don't have Expanded Universe, that concept. If there's comics or books or anything outside the movies and television, it's non-canon. And I was just curious of your thoughts of, do you think Star Wars should eventually stick with, go with that model? Or if they should maybe stick with, yes, let's just keep everything canon, and hopefully it all makes sense, or reboot it every 20 years. Anyway, keep up the great work. Love you guys. Take care.
Well, thanks for the call. You know, I'll tell you what I have to contribute to this conversation, because I was not and haven't been a big consumer of the Expanded Universe. However, been following it and been talking about it for a long time. And I often compared it to Star Trek. I liked what the rules that Roddenberry had set out, which was essentially, if it's not on the screen, it's not canon. Knock yourself out. Fill my pockets with as much money as you want so that you can get the license to write your comic books and your novels. And there's been some great stuff in Star Trek. And I may have read more Star Trek EU in my day than I have Star Wars EU, classic Star Wars EU. And there was a lot of really cool stuff. I always looked at it as sort of a testing ground. Like, wow, if there's a story that really gets a lot of traction, even William Shatner was writing his own Star Trek books. I remember after that debacle of Star Trek Generations, where they killed him off. If you remember, the guy shot him in the back. The old guy from, was that the guy? What was that
Malcolm
guy?
McDowell.
Yeah, Malcolm McDowell shoots him in the back. Yeah. Picard's just a helpless witness to this. And fans didn't like it. Shatner didn't like it. So you know what he did? He wrote like a trilogy of books resurrecting the character. It was actually called Star Trek Resurrections, and it was a really cool story. So if you're out there and you're a Star Trek fan and you were really unsatisfied or disappointed with how Star Trek Generations went down, there is a really cool trilogy of stories that talk about how Captain Kirk came back. Anyway, that's suffice to say that even William Shatner himself dipped his toes into the waters of writing essentially non-canon fiction, tie-in fiction within the Star Trek universe. And I think that it served that franchise very well. This idea that you can have all of these different mediums that have all their own different publishing schedules. Comic books have monthly publishing schedules, novels. I mean, they're cranking hardback novels. I think close to a half a dozen more a month or a year, plus the junior stuff. It's just, Jim, I think that it's by sheer volume, it's just impossible. It's an impossible task. We were talking about video games. Those have to line up. Animated series have to line up. I got people online saying that this Young Jedi Adventures is going to be canon because Disney promised it was all going to be canon if it was under their banner. So it's getting to the point where it's going to collapse under its own weight once again.
Well, yes, I think that's inevitable. But right now, it's they're trucking along with trying to tie in everything. And I don't think it's such an effort to tie everything into the bigger story. It's just trying to find a place in the galaxy for these stories to take place. That's all it really is. And so with the High Republic era, you have this uncharted period of time that Lucasfilm is making their top priority and fleshing out and building from the ground up and see what comes of that. And so I think most of us will really see the fruits of all that labor happen with the Acolyte, which may or may not directly connect to the stories being told in the books, but it'll have that impact on the era that in the timeline, that point in the timeline. Now, Star Trek books, I think, are easier to compartmentalize because it's naturally episodic in its nature. And we've seen many episodes of Star Trek play back to back to back to back without any effect on the characters or storyline. It's a reset every time you hear space, the final frontier. And because of the fact that it's a crew going on individual missions also lends it to being naturally episodic. Whereas Star Wars was always part of this grand mythology that told the story of a family, and they're all from a very specific place. And so how does building upon that in novels and comic books, how does that affect the big picture sort of thing? It's a bigger struggle with Star Wars than it'll ever be with Star Trek.
Here's the other thing, and I find this really fascinating because I was sort of late to the MCU party. When those movies were coming out and hitting theaters, that's when our kids were being born and they were little, and it was hard to get out for a date night and go see a movie. But I've caught up with a number of them. Up until really the Disney Plus series. I got to watch Loki. But kept up with the movies and with Guardians of the Galaxy out there. I don't want to give any spoilers, but some of the narrative that I'm hearing, and I feel like this is relevant to this conversation about canon, is that with this last Guardians movie, Marvel has lost all of its most recognizable and well-liked characters. So now you're done with the A team and the B team. Now you got the C team, and there's just no box office there. It is just making the diehard comic book readers, I can't even say if they're happy. They complain about things just like Star Wars fans do, but that's what could potentially happen to Star Wars if they follow that track, where we're going to lose all of these iconic characters that established a lot of times the charm of the universe. And then what are you left with? And that can be challenging.
That's why you need a Mandalorian. New character, fresh, blue sky. It's completely developed for a specific audience by Disney themselves. It doesn't have that George Lucas did it. So we have to crack the code. The Mandalorian just came out of nowhere and saved the day.
Yeah.
Marvel needs a Mandalorian right now. The pendulum has once again shifted because Marvel stopped making movies everyone could enjoy, and they started making only movies that hardcore Marvel fans would enjoy. The freshness of going to see Iron Man in 2008 with my family and being totally surprised by the richness and quality of the way that film was put together and how everyone just loved it. It was great. Now the weight of the franchise is beginning to crush itself. And that's where we're at.
Some of the realities too. I mean, is that the actors get bored and tired of playing the characters they want out. So some of it isn't just the writer is saying, let's get rid of this character or that character. There's a lot of creatives that are mixed up in the soup, you know? And so it's not always in the hands of the writers. And you get into these issues about recasting. We've talked about that with respect to Star Wars a lot. But we're looking at the better part of 45 years now. This franchise has been going on. And I think one of the things we have to come to terms with is that we're obviously going to be losing a lot of the original actors, and every generation seems to sort of have its touch point with the saga, whether it be the OT generation, the PT generation, the expanded universe, you know, like our friend Ryan here talking about how much time and effort he's put into the EU, and then all of a sudden he gets told essentially none of it matters. Hard to not take that to heart and say, well, boy, I really wasted my time. Do I really want to invest in another 500 books and comics in order to keep up? So I can understand once you've kind of weathered this reboot once, and now you're looking at it perhaps happening again, maybe, or the inevitability of it happening again. Now you're questioning, all right, maybe we put limits on what is canon so that we can let this thing breathe and have it last a little bit longer.
Yeah. But they think we're too stupid as an audience to figure it out. Oh, they'll be so confused. They think we're a bunch of infants, and thus they overthink everything they do, you know, before they give the baby its bottle.
Yeah.
Again, because Star Wars has this mythology that's really set in stone, and if you disrupt that mythology, it causes huge ripples. It's not like the James Bond movies where you could just bring in another Bond. Although I do predict that, you know, the Bond franchise, I think they have an uphill battle. It's not as automatic as it used to be now in the age of franchise entertainment. The Bond franchise was the franchise entertainment for how many decades? Now it's surrounded by franchises, and the rules have changed. So let's see how the Bond franchise emerges from its current hiatus with whoever the next James Bond will be. DC Comics, they're able to switch in and out Batman so fast. I don't even know who's playing Batman anymore. You know, it doesn't even matter to me. I don't care. There's like 3 guys playing Batman now.
You can have your it's like the old days, you know, you had your favorite Catwoman on the old Batman show. Were you a Julie Newmar fan? Were you an Eartha Kitt fan? You had your own Riddler. You could have been a John Aston fan. You could have been a Frank Gorshin fan.
All the way.
Frank Gorshin all the way. Yeah, I love Gomez Adams, but yeah, of course. But anyway, it's a great question.
Frank because he brought that suit coat and top hat to the Riddler and gave him some real style.
Yeah, instead of the tights. The tights were, I mean, Gorshin wore the tights and the slippers too, but John Aston was all tights and
yeah, that was unfortunate. That was an unfortunate wardrobe situation.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell what religion John Aston was by those tights. But anyway, thanks for the question, Ryan. Appreciate it very much. Let's check in with the news. How about that?
I have good news for you, my lord.
That's good news. Come closer, I have good news.
All right. Of course, the writers' strike is the talk of the town, the Hollywood town. I got to tell you, I'm not going to sit here and claim to be an expert. I don't know really what they're fighting for. All I know is that when you're in the world of entertainment, yeah, it's always about the money, of course. But when you're in the world of
also the emerging AI technologies have the screenwriter community shaking in their boots right now, and they want some sort of boundaries set for usage of artificial intelligence when it comes to writing screenplays. That's just among many things.
Yeah.
But these studios are posting top profits of all time, and a lot of writers they're not getting what they deserve. And this happens all over the creative industry. So good for them. Good for them.
Here's what I care about. Is it going to impact my Star Wars? And
of course.
In the case of Andor, it may.
In the case of Andor, it's get back to work, you bums. Let's go. Star Wars is on the line. Yeah, everything changes if we're talking the wars.
Yeah. Well, look, everything changes. I mean, that's really the theme of this, is because so much has changed in the world of entertainment, especially since COVID. Just when it seems like you've secured your creative rights over things like syndication and streaming in general, now all of a sudden you've got, it's not just streaming over the top on demand. That was a big deal. On demand through your cable, on demand through an over the top service. Now you've got dedicated streaming networks, and there is no heck in the world of Disney. There's not even home video releases much anymore. Mandalorian doesn't seem to be getting released to home video anymore. So I can understand, because the nature of the business has evolved and changed so quickly. A lot of these contracts and these union agreements, they need to be brought up to date. And of course, that's going to cost these companies big money. So the only point I would sort of push back is I don't believe that any of these big production companies are posting record profits. You look at Disney, you look at Netflix, you look at Amazon Prime, media consumption is way up, but the costs are also way, way up. So I don't know that any of these companies are making what you would consider obscene profits, but that's all obviously in the eyes of the beholder. Who am I to say what's obscene, what's not obscene?
Corporate waste is a real thing, and they dig their own graves a lot of times. So that's what I see happening.
Well, Tony Gilroy was around just minding his own business, having already finished the screenplays for Andor Season 2 when he got called out. So he got called out by a fella. I don't really know who this guy is, to tell you the truth. This is Abdullah Saeed. He's another showrunner, another writer. He's got multiple credits to his name. He wasn't somebody that crossed my path until I saw him giving Tony Gilroy a hard time. So he went on Instagram and he said, Abdullah Saeed, S-A-E-E-D. I know that people are listening to this going, he wrote this show.
No, I don't. He's a TV producer.
Yeah,
he's a fellow television producer like Mr. Gilroy.
Yeah, well,
and he's known for what is he known for? Such big smashes as Bong Appetit. I think that this guy is a very.
Did you read that right? Was that Bong Appetit or was that a Freudian slip?
No, that was true. It's
okay.
So that's a show that's on the Vice network.
Oh, I see.
And this gentleman, Mr. Saeed, he has 3 credits in his career: 30 episodes of Bong Appetit, 1 episode of Black Market Dispatches, and 1 episode of Vice Does America.
Okay.
So I just like to know who is attacking somebody who has a pedigree a mile long, like Tony Gilroy, not just for Star Wars, but the Bourne Identity franchise. Anyone?
Right.
And Michael Clayton. And
this Saeed guy, he went after Tony Gilroy on Instagram. He said, this is scabbing. There's no way a writer-producer can, quote, finish writing and begin solely producing. Because the deal was, Gilroy said, look, I'm not crossing any picket lines because I've already written the series. I'm doing other show-running responsibilities, and this is the Writers Guild that's on strike. This isn't you wouldn't think that this would impact, certainly not impacting the carpenters. It's not impacting the set designers, the graphic designers, any of that stuff.
Right.
I mean, it's impacting them, but they're not directly. It's not their union.
They're working and they're producing special effects. The composer is writing music that needs, all of this stuff needs to be signed off on. And is that writing? I don't think so. Tony is.
No, the concern lies that when they start rolling the cameras, they'll make decisions that impact the script. So if you say, hey, I'm not real comfortable with this line, what do you say? I say this instead. Well, that's writing, and you've crossed the picket line, and you're a scab. So here is Saeed saying, if the scripts are truly finished, let's see them. If there's one word different in the finished product, kick Tony Gilroy out of the WGA. One of the biggest writers in Hollywood could stand with his union and halt production on his hit show. I don't know that I would call Andor a hit. It's certainly well known.
I would. It won a Peabody Award for Best Drama of the Year.
Critical acclaim doesn't necessarily make it a hit. But anyway,
it's a hit. If it's Star Wars, it's a hit.
All right,
baby.
I love it. You love it, but it's not. It wasn't tearing up the charts as far as the downloads. But anyway, one of the biggest writers in Hollywood could stand with his union and halt production on his hit show, thereby forcing a major studio to consider WGA demands a little harder. Instead, he has chosen to be a scab. He's a scab. I like when these. I love when these unions. If you work in a coal mine, I have no problem with the union. If you're a truck driver and you used to have to burn your fingers with cigarettes to stay awake because you had to reach your destination or you wouldn't get paid, all right, a union. But some of these people that have these posh jobs and they're calling them scabs like it's the 1940s and it's Jimmy Hoffa. Come on. Silly. Anyway, he says
coming up next on RFR, Jason Swank's Teamster jokes. Stay tuned. He's got a lot of them. How many Teamsters does it take to screw in a light bulb? Stay tuned.
I'm just saying that there are certain professions to me where it really makes sense to have a labor union, and there are others where
I hear what you're saying. When personal safety comes to mind.
Right,
yes,
of course.
Yes.
But anyway, he says, instead he has chosen to be a scab. We all want Andor Season 2, but not at the cost of fairness to writers. WGA strong. So he goes after Tony Gilroy after it was announced that Andor was resuming the production during this big strike. So Gilroy said he was doing non-writer duties. However, things changed, and Tony Gilroy decided then to go ahead and bow out and sent Disney a letter and said that production would halt. He would not be doing any other duties until this was resolved. So he is stepping away from Star Wars officially over the strike. So are you happy, Saeed?
Well, you know what? It's probably the wise move for Mr. Gilroy.
It is, of course. That was not
stand with his fellow writers and step aside, and they could figure out Andor without him. So look out for Season 2, produced by Michelle Rejuan. Oh, by the way, her name came up. We got the RFR rumor mill. Can I dive in, Jason?
Yeah, you can, but before you do, I just want to button this up and just say that it is not determined whether this will impact Andor. Of course, Andor is supposed to hit Disney Plus in next August. So who knows? Who knows? I think they're in good shape. Cameras were about ready to roll from what I gather. Lots of work beyond the scripts already being done. So I would say if it does impact it, it should be minimal if the strike is resolved soon. Beyond that, who knows?
I could say with great confidence that the cameras have been rolling on Andor. As a matter of fact, they were supposed to return to some shooting locations from Aldhani, but there were environmental issues, and so the shoot had to be shut down. They shut down the shoot.
Uh-oh.
Shoot got shut down, Jason.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, so I don't know what to say about that, except look for action to return to Aldhani in season 2 of Andor. Now I'm trying to open up my top secret tab on my top secret on my burner phone where I get all these.
We got some
Star
hot gossip
rumors.
You're going to get into this.
Gossip. And I had it pulled up here. But we'll get to it. Let's do another story. And then
all right.
While
you're looking for that, let's talk about Dave Filoni. That's right. Dave Filoni had a nice feature in Empire magazine. And I just wanted to share this. Of course, characteristic Dave Filoni style. We've interviewed him countless times over the years. And I always loved Dave's non-answers. You'd ask him a question and he would go, yeah, it's a really good question. Wouldn't you like to know the answer? See, that's
what did
the
you
difference.
like to know?
I know the answer and you don't. So yeah, he always had a great way of not answering questions. But some of the stuff that he lays down, I think, is pretty interesting. Of course, we all know that he's going to be directing the big feature film that will bring the Mando verse together. Rumors are that it'll involve Din Djarin, Ahsoka, Grand Admiral Thrawn. But what Dave says about the theatrical experience as opposed to telling stories for the small screen, although I don't know if you can still call it the small screen. I've seen some pretty big screens in people's living rooms. He says, but to me, we know what he's talking about. He's talking about paying $15, go to the movie theater, see the movie on the big screen. He says, to me, a theatrical experience has to have a big idea, a monumental moment in the time period that changes what's happening. What Tony has done in Andor, we were just talking about Tony Gilroy, and what we did in Rebels, everything then changes when Luke blows up the Death Star. You're looking for those moments that define an era, and that's what the film should really be about, whether it's characters coming together or a defining moment. So he's equating what he's done in Rebels and telling smaller stories, that when you couple that with the smaller story that Tony Gilroy's talking about in Andor, that culminates in what? It culminates in Luke blowing up the Death Star. All of that leads to the big moments. And so blowing up the Death Star seems to be kind of the line that Dave is drawing. It's got to be a blow up the Death Star kind of moment in order to justify being up on the big screen. Of course, this is very Dave. I have ideas, of course. I will not tell you what they are. So he goes, there are little things along the way. This is where I really thought this was interesting. There are little things along the way that I've built across different mediums, all in preparation for things that come later. So he's essentially telling us, Jim, that this has sort of been in the works for a while. And even I like to think that Dave's the type of creative that even before he ever dreamed he would be writing and directing a Star Wars feature film, I think Dave is the kind of guy, and he's the sort of visionary, and he loves the lore and the mythology so much that I think it's not a stretch to think that he was planting little seeds along the way just in case. You just never know. Leaving breadcrumbs, planting seeds, and here we go. So
yeah,
from that standpoint, I think, he's still the perfect guy to do something like this because he has been at the helm of some of these, for lack of a better expression, smaller stories that have been told that are then culminating into this big event. And so two things. I love the fact that there is a sense of pre-planning. I mean, it's not necessarily him sitting there having an outline of everything in advance, but he understands that you gotta sow these seeds. And then the second is he realizes that it's not enough just to take these characters and put them on the big screen. You have to have a big moment and a big beat in the overall story. So this gives me a lot of comfort. If there are any doubts, this gives me a lot of comfort.
It has me considering, too, Dave's history of Star Wars storytelling and what projects that he has been showrunner of or writing or executive producer for, working under George Lucas at the same time. What stories has he thrown out there that have sort of loose ends? I would say Mortis is definitely one of them. No question about Mortis. And the world between worlds and the big talking moose that lives underground and the Purgles, of course, the Purgles, and Ahsoka Tano herself. These are all loose ends in the Filoni-verse. So these are the things that he'll probably try to tie all together to bring us some kind of epic tale. And this might have been stuff he's been working on since he was just a fan. Some of these concepts might date back to his sketchbook from college. Who knows?
Now, here's the flip side of all this. Yeah, you laid out a lot of really cool big ideas that we could be seeing on the big screen with his film. But does that then lower the expectations for what we're going to be seeing leading up to it? Those of us that think we're going to be seeing big epic battles and team ups and all of that, whereas before this movie was given the green light, we might have seen it. Now you think about a Luke Skywalker appearance. We got that right with a season of The Mandalorian. We got it again with a season of Book of Boba Fett. Now, would they say, no, save that for the movie?
Yes. Exactly. And we'll see the big three reunite in their prime in the Filoni film. And they'll be in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon with Chewie and Lando sometimes. Well, sometimes Lando, he's strapped in there, in the back with Admiral Holdo. Yes.
With Holdo?
Well, that's happened. That's actually happened in the Marvel comics.
Oh, really?
Holdo
is riding around with our heroes, huh?
Yes. On this particular,
she's slapping
mission.
Han Solo around.
No, she's young Holdo.
Oh,
young Holdo.
Okay, so this is before she starts slapping the guys around.
This is she's between
putting them in their place.
Slapping. She's slapping. It's got the blue hair slap, but it's the Marvel comics are based between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. So she's part of the organized alliance against the Empire, and that sort of establishes the basis for her friendship with Leia. And good on Billy D. But that's where I think we'll see our reunion. And it's going to be very interesting to see young Harrison Ford in the first 25 minutes of the Dial of Destiny Indiana Jones film that's coming up this summer. As Star Wars fans, we're going to be watching that film very closely to see how the deep fake looks in a major motion picture, to see young Harrison Ford, Han Solo, original trilogy era Harrison Ford back on the screen. And James Mangold, of course, the James Mangold factor. I got my burner phone here, Swank. and I have all the information from our source. This is a Hollywood insider who's been laying some stuff on us lately. And it all started when the rumor came out a few weeks ago that Helen Mirren was potentially going to portray an older Rey in the Damon Lindelof Rey film. That whole thing, right?
Yeah, well, the point, the truth behind that way, Helen Mirren wasn't even contacted about this. It was that Lindelof was writing old Rey and he was picturing a Helen Mirren.
Of course.
That
right.
was...
He's writing the role for her.
Right.
That's how a lot of screenwriting goes down. You picture the dream actor you want to portray that role.
But it's not like Helen Mirren was attached to this movie in any way other than in Damon Lindelof's imagination.
All right, well, here's the inside scoop. That it was going to be an old Rey who would be telling the story of a young Rey.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
So it was to get post-sequel trilogy generation and then jump super far ahead in the timeline. And so Lindelof turned in this idea, and he was fired less than a day after turning it in. This was back in February. And right away, Kathleen Kennedy, she called Stephen Knight and asked him to come up with something new based around Rey with new Jedi. So they're basically throwing all the Lindelof stuff out that's going in the trash can. And Michelle Rejwan, who was associated with the project as a producer, is the one who probably was supervising this project for Lucasfilm and kind of let it get a little long in the development before some of the weaknesses in the story or the concept were being revealed to the higher brass at Lucasfilm. So, as a result, she has been iced out of Lucasfilm. So, and that's why basically there's going to be no second season of Willow as well. It's because of these slip-ups.
Well, Willow was a slip-up.
Well, critically, I would say yes. So some people enjoyed it, but I don't know. I think that series actually did damage to the old film from 1998.
But just in terms of the ratings, it tanked completely. Sadly, we love Warwick. I love the universe. Didn't watch a minute of it because everybody that I talked to, whose opinion I have a lot of respect for, said don't. And I was getting commentary as friends were wading through it. But I think that series didn't do any good for her reputation within the company because the views were way, 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 way down. And by the end,
I think
real bad.
I think the Rise of Skywalker also may have hurt her reputation around there a little bit as well, because she was a player on that film. I like The Rise of Skywalker. I say it all the time. They've been showing it on TBS for the May the 4th weekend. And so you could watch TBS East Coast, TBS West Coast. East Coast is playing The Last Jedi. West Coast is playing The Rise of Skywalker. So I'm like, all right, I'll put myself in the sequel trilogy torture rack and just sit there for like a couple hours flipping between the two of them, jumping back and forth. It was wild, dude. It was wild. And I see I really noted a big difference in tone between the two films. There's something that J.J. Abrams did right with Star Wars. This, storytelling aside, the way that he is able to shoot it, present it, have the characters act, all of that stuff, to me feels very Star Wars. It's just keep him away from the story.
Yeah, he's a good director. He knows how to direct Star Wars. He knows how to put it on the screen. I think that's for sure. But not a great idea guy when it comes to the stories.
It's a little shallow, that's all. I mean,
it was.
He has his strengths and he has his weaknesses. But unfortunately, he has a lot of clout and power in Hollywood, too. So nobody will tell him what he's doing right, what he's doing wrong. I don't know. So here's some really interesting stuff. Now the Rey film has gone belly up, and Lucasfilm is looking at Star Wars Celebration 2 months away, and they're revamping the whole thing. So all of a sudden, then the Dave Filoni project becomes a priority, and then that gets announced at Star Wars Celebration, probably before it was planned to be announced. I mean, it wasn't like it was sprung on anybody by surprise, but all of a sudden it just moved up really high and hot in the priority list because their Rey follow-up film was struggling. And we still
nothing
don't
like
know.
No
We might
Choice.
see the Rey film. They had no choice. Now, the Mangold thing. The Mangold movie was basically an idea he had while making Indy that Kathleen was like, well, let's just announce it because you're going to be in London anyway, promoting the Indiana Jones thing. And so, like, no real deal was done for him at the time. And they sent him a PDF of current Jedi canon so he could talk about it when he was on stage in London, just to sort of school him. They sent him a PDF of certain things.
Here's your copy points. Don't mess it up. No pressure.
So that seems like it's in a very, what do you say, nebulous state right now. It's
infancy. It's in its infancy. It's in fact, it's so tiny. It's just a speck in his brain.
Now, apparently, James is.
If he sneezes hard enough, the movie's gone. Just so you know, that's the way it is with.
Well, he is committed to do the Swamp Thing film.
Yeah,
and I can't remember which is supposed to be tops on his production list: Star Wars or Swamp Thing. I'm not sure on that. It's just kind of something I remembered as we were talking about it.
I'm not holding my breath on the Mangold movie. I'll tell you that. I'm not holding my breath on that. I think that's probably going to be Back Burner City. That'll be that one where in a year from now they'll be talking to Kathleen Kennedy and she'll be like, we love James, but he's very busy with the Swamp Thing and other projects, but we love him. And that movie, we never really had an idea for that movie. It was just something that we had talked about. Nothing was on paper. That's that.
Think about these guys in Hollywood. They're quote, too busy for Star Wars. Their schedule will not allow them to work on the biggest film franchise of all time. They have higher priorities. I mean, think of everybody. Rian Johnson, of course, who, let's face it, folks, he only put the Knives Out film into production is because Lucasfilm and Disney told Ryan he better find something else to do for now. After The Last Jedi came out and the fandoms were acting like the Jets and the Sharks and West Side Story, pulling out switchblades, dancing around. It was a crazy time. They told Ryan, hey, piss off, go do Glass Onion. And then, or whatever that movie is, Knives Out.
Right.
And so Ryan did that and stumbled into an extremely successful thing that he's going to be able to milk for years to come now. And then you have Donald Glover. Too busy now. Lando Calrissian was the dream role for him, I recall him saying in media for the Solo movie. Now all of a sudden he's way too busy. Isn't he the guy who stepped away from a hip-hop career? Didn't he put Childish Gambino on ice? It seems like he has less things to do now than he did. He's signing on to Marvel movies instead of being in Star Wars as Lando Calrissian. It's never going to happen. And now we got, James Mangold. I still am trying to hold out the faith for Mangold to come through.
I don't know. I mean, it's going to be very hard for them. The Filoni thing, that's done. I have no doubt that the Filoni film will happen. I think that there's Filoni, it's all done in-house. They've got all the characters. They've got Dave there. There's no question about that. It's not getting out. It's not going to get away from him. The Rey thing, bringing Daisy Ridley out on stage, that really committed them because I can't think of a project where they've had an actor on the stage prancing around and talking about it and it not happening. I can't think of one where, they've had creatives announced, they have writers, obviously directors, and those things have fallen through. But once you start bringing out Daisy Ridley and putting her on stage, that is committing the company to seeing that this happened. So the Rey movie is going to happen, and it will most likely happen in time for that December 2025 slot.
Right.
The Mangold thing, I might have to make another bet with FJ on that. I don't see happening. What they decided to give it the official green light because he happened to be in London? Come on. That's all it takes?
Well, they wanted to have a shock and awe presentation. And why announce one movie when you can announce 3? So they went for it. And that's the plan.
They never learn, do they? They never, ever learn.
I don't know. I have faith. What if the indie movie comes out this summer and you just love it? It's like the greatest.
I'd love it. It'd be great. Believe me, I'm rooting for it. I'm rooting for indie. I'm rooting for these Star Wars films. But when we hear things like this, it makes it very, very challenging to not be cynical. And I'm delighted about the Dave movie. I want that to happen. The Rey movie, let's see. I don't see people screaming for it, asking for it, begging for it. But that's right now, sitting here in the summer of 2023. Who knows what the climate will be like in December of 2025, especially once we start getting more information about it, what the story is going to be, who the rest of the cast is. I mean, John Boyega, he's making a few headlines recently. He's really thawing out when it comes to Star Wars. He's
he's looking at the paperwork and seeing those dollar
signs. Yeah, maybe it wasn't so bad, And although he continues to throw Rian Johnson under the bus and gives a lot of credit to J.J. Abrams and said, hey, I really appreciated J.J.'s vision for the character. Much more than Ryan's. I think that he made a lot of missteps. So he's been fairly consistent in that, at least since all 3 movies have been released. The only thing is that, he really was fanning the flames of a lot of real toxic stuff and throwing some pretty heavy accusations at fandom, which I didn't appreciate. But be that as it may, he seems to be having a change of heart ever since the Rey movie was greenlit. And I want to see Finn in the Rey movie. What's the Rey movie going to be without Finn and Poe and Rose and the rest of that crew? Of course. Who else would be in it?
What's a Rey movie without someone yelling, Rey? All right, I have more Star Wars rumor mill on the burner phone here. From our Hollywood Insider. This is what Hollywood insiders are discussing inside Hollywood when it comes to Star Wars. Word is Ahsoka, the series, is very good. Very good. And it will deal with multiverse stuff like Rebels. That means world between worlds. That's what I think. Our insider didn't say world between worlds, just said multiverse. Multiverse. There may be a scene, spoiler alert. This is a rumor, so I don't know how to qualify rumors as spoilers.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Don't say we didn't warn you.
There may be a scene where she meets Clone Wars era Anakin. Maybe that's not such a big spoiler. We've known that. Hey, we were talking. We talked about.
And
if it's jumping multiverses, then they're going to have a scene with Rosario's Ahsoka and Hayden's Anakin.
They don't even have to do a multiverse. They could just do a simple flashback. Star Wars is full of flashbacks these days.
Okay, here's stuff about the fallout with Gina Carano. Oh, I'm told the Favreau KK feud is fiction. It is not real. It is something that is being made up by YouTubers and Twitter Hounds.
I thought you were going to say the wizards at ILM constructed that.
No, so no feud between KK and Favs, according to what we're hearing, and I don't see how they could coexist if there were. So it was confirmed that they shifted Mando Season 3 to take the Rangers of the New Republic storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I don't know what that means. Okay, the story of Din and the Mandos was adjusted. I don't understand.
Yeah,
so I can't even.
So my interpretation of this is that Din was supposed to stay with the Mandalorians. The character that was supposed to become the Ranger and or excuse me, the Marshal, and get the little house. And
that was Cara.
That was supposed to be Cara's story. Cara Dune was supposed to have the happy ending there with the little house and the white picket fence and the children playing in the yard. But they made it Din's story. Din was going to stay with the Mandos.
Okay, there's one more thing on the burner phone from Star Wars Rumor Mill
Hot
Central.
Goss, RFR.
Hot gossip from Hollywood. Basically, Filoni had very little to do with season 3 of The Mandalorian because of the Ahsoka series, which kept him very busy. And that's why they elevated Rick Famuyiwa to executive producer. And that's it.
Well, that's
when the communication goes dead.
Okay. Well,
but that's good stuff.
It's great stuff. Well, I think what we can surmise from that is if Mandalorian season 3 left you wanting, if it didn't quite live up to the first 2 seasons, what do we know? We know that Dave Filoni was hardly, if at all, involved. And number 2, we learned that they had to really pick up the pieces after they lost a major character with Gina Carano's Cara Dune. So those 2 elements alone seem to have really rocked season 3. The good news is they've had a season to recover. Let's see what they do with season 4. Ahsoka's going to lead us into that, I believe. Plus, we've got Skeleton Crew out there, which takes place in the same era. Don't forget about that. And so between Ahsoka, Skeleton Crew, Mando season 4, and who knows what else before we get the big Dave Filoni crossover film.
Yeah.
I think we're in store for a lot of really great things. It's a shame that they didn't recast Cara. I like the character. I understand that they reached an impasse between Disney and Gina Carano. Be that as it may. But I don't know why you had to throw away the character. They're just, they just do this. This reluctance to recast is beyond me. I don't understand. Look at Bewitched. They had 2 Darrens.
Hey, that second Darren was weird, and everyone knew it.
They had 2 Beckys on Roseanne. I mean, this has been done before, folks. Come on.
And I always preferred original Becky.
Well, of course, yeah. The other Becky, she was good on Scrubs. She was only there for like 1 year.
I was just thinking that Jon Favreau, during the entire season of Mandalorian and in interviews leading up to it, people would ask him about season 4, and he'd be like, "Yeah, it's mostly done. It's mostly done. Yeah. Season 4 is mostly done. There's probably going to be a season 5 too, because he had all of these concepts for season 3 that got pushed aside so they could squeeze the Rangers of the New Republic ideas in there before they got stale on the shelf. And, at least get some of the money back that it took to develop all of that stuff.
So what you're saying is what we end up seeing in season 4 could be stuff that might have originally been conceived for season 3. And so they have a backlog of ideas because of them having to shoehorn the Rangers stuff into.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Of course, speculation. But that's what we do here.
So Din is now serving as the Ranger of Navarro.
The Marshal.
Or the Marshal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, whatever. But then if that's not what Favreau wants, he'll unravel that in the first episode.
Well, that's true. Yes.
Yeah. He'll send Din off on some sort of mission somewhere, and he'll never return to Navarro again. If that's what Jon Favreau wants.
Right.
If Jon Favreau wants to run away from the Rangers of the New Republic story concepts that ended up in Mandalorian, then he will write them out swiftly and without apology.
All right. Well, let's turn the page here and talk about Carrie Fisher. Carrie Fisher got honors the Hollywood Walk of Fame. That's right, the 15 blocks of Hollywood Boulevard and the 3 blocks of Vine Street.
And miles of vomit. Hollywood.
I've never been there.
Oh, I used to work there, and that was in the 90s, and it was really gross then. And I went back a few years.
I'm sure it's worse now.
Time. I walked the old hood. No. It's much, much nicer now. It's way. I mean, believe it or not, more touristy, if that could be possible.
Have you been there in the last 3 years?
It's much nicer than it was. You know why? Because they built the theater where they have the Oscars. When they built that thing, they cleaned up the whole neighborhood. So it's vastly different than what it looked like in the 90s to me. But back in the 90s, the stars on the Walk of Fame, a lot of them were really, covered with all sort of questionable substance, let's just say.
Well, Carrie Fisher got number 2754, 2,754th star on the Walk of Fame. And what better day to do it than on May 4th, 2023. And her daughter, Billie Lourd, was there to accept the star in her honor. And Mark Hamill was the keynote speaker doing the dedication. And as you can see from the photo we've got here, 3PO, R2-D2 in attendance, which is great. And Billie Lourd, how about that dress? That dress is amazing. It actually features a photograph on the dress of Carrie Fisher as Princess Leia from Episode 4, A New Hope. And in those, of course, iconic star puffs on the side of her head. And although there was a little bit of family gossip going on. The siblings were not invited. There seems to be some family feuding between Billie Lourd. Yeah, that happens. Especially when they had 2 drop. They had, of course, Carrie Fisher and then Debbie Reynolds. And so there was a lot of, well, let's face it, money and prestige and legacy and all of that dropping on Carrie's siblings and Billie, her only child. So, it's bad enough when just a normal person drops and then the family all swoops in like vultures picking away at the bones. But when you've got Hollywood royalty like Debbie Reynolds and Carrie Fisher, you can imagine that it's just all the more heightened. I'm not taking sides here, but Billie Lourd looked fantastic. Mark Hamill looking very fit too. Mark Hamill, I tell you what, that guy, the discipline, because we all saw Mark Hamill, in the late 90s and the early aughts when he started making the convention rounds, and then all of a sudden he got in ship shape for the sequel trilogy. Yep. I don't know why, because they certainly didn't show him off in that way, but he looks great. And here, all these years later, he still looks really good. He looks years younger than he did. I swear to God, Jimmy, he looks younger than he did in 2005.
Yeah, he's been revitalized. Obvious lifestyle change for Mark happened about a decade ago, right after he started talking to George Lucas about coming back as Luke Skywalker. I think Mark, he celebrated that fact a little bit, and then they sent him off to shed the pounds. And he stuck to it. But, I mean, you're right. That's the discipline. He stuck to it. It gets harder as you get older. As for the Carrie Fisher and her family having a spat, I know where Billy is coming from, I guess. Because I noted that as soon as Carrie passed, her brother Todd Fisher was out doing interviews and acting as a family spokesperson and stuff. And I was left thinking to myself, who is Todd Fisher? I'd never even heard of the guy before now. Obviously, I knew of Billy Lord because she appeared in The Force Awakens. And Carrie's sister, Jolie Fisher, she's had an acting career. She's been in show business, so I knew who she was. But Todd popped up, and he was acting as a family spokesperson, and then he put a book out, and I guess that really frosted young Billy, who felt like she should have been consulted as the daughter and, obvious heir to Carrie Fisher's estate. And so, family feud. But Mark looks great. Billy certainly looked great. And we have some highlights here from Mark Hamill. These are the first words he said. He just kind of riffed on Carrie a little bit, as a friend would do while talking fondly about a fellow friend.
I met Carrie when she was 19 years old. I'd been over filming for about a month, and we arranged to have a dinner so that we could meet each other. And I'm thinking, she's 19 years old. I mean, she's barely out of high school. I was a worldly 24. And every expectation I had was just obliterated. She was so charming, so funny, so adorable, so wise beyond her years. I just couldn't believe it. And brutally frank. She started telling me stories, intimate stories, about her family that I'm thinking, should I be hearing this? I mean, these were things that I would probably not tell friends unless I knew them for years. But that was Carrie. She also had a wisdom that seemed to be far beyond what a 19-year-old should be expected to have.
Oh, yeah. Carrie was never shy. And that was, when you have vices, Jim, we're so
Jim.
No.
I can read between the lines.
No.
You don't have to sugarcoat this.
Oh,
let's do it.
When you have vices, we're so accustomed, whether they be celebrities or politicians, they make excuses for themselves. They lie about it oftentimes. And what made Carrie so unique was she owned it. She owned her successes. She owned her failures. She owned what made her great. She owned what made her not so great. And I think that so many people related to her in that way because of that. And Mark's story shows that she's been like that for a long time, since she was a teenager. Growing up in Hollywood, not easy, especially when you wake up in the morning and there's Sinatra making eggs with his bathrobe, because he'd stayed the night before. I mean, cool stuff, but I mean, what does that do to a kid?
And also, Carrie grew up in the spotlight, so obviously very comfortable being herself in the spotlight. But Debbie Reynolds used to do these shows where she would do, a song, a dance, tell a joke, but she would get personal on stage too and tell stories about her life and even address things as serious as her divorce from Eddie Fisher and stuff. And she kind of would let it all hang out a little bit. And I think young Carrie was taking notes, seeing a lot of this stuff going down.
Well, it was hard. It was probably hard for Debbie Reynolds to not be open about it because it played out in front of the public. I mean, her split from Eddie Fisher, him running to
Liz
Taylor, right? I mean, it was headlines everywhere. And so to not acknowledge it, I would say it was probably the modern, or it was the equivalent of when Brad Pitt was splitting from
Jennifer Aniston.
Yeah. Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston. I mean, it was that big, I think, at that time. two huge stars. So yeah, you're right. It was like almost like maybe the way she coped, the way she handled it was to be, hey, everyone else would be running around trying to keep this a secret. I'm going to go on stage in Vegas with my daughter and I'm going to tell these stories. You can hear it from me.
Here's a kind of a sweet moment for Mark Hamill, where he pulls out a piece of paper where he jotted down some thoughts about Carrie after she passed away. And you hear the emotion in Mark's voice as he reads these words.
I got out a notebook and I was going to write down some of my thoughts, but then I found what I wrote 6 years ago, not long after we lost her. And I thought, this is as relevant today as it was when I wrote it. And what I wrote was, Carrie was one of a kind who belonged to us all, whether we liked it or not. She was our princess, damn it, and the actress who played her blurred into one gorgeous, fiercely independent, and ferociously funny take-charge woman who took our collective breath away. Determined and tough, but with a vulnerability that made you root for her and want her to succeed and be happy. She played such a crucial role in my professional and personal life, and both would have been far emptier without her. Was she a handful? Was she high maintenance? Oh, no doubt. But everything would have been so much drabber and less interesting if she hadn't been the friend that she was. I'll never stop missing her, but I'm so thankful we had her as long as we did. I'm grateful for the laughter, the wisdom, the kindness, and even the bratty, self-indulgent crap my beloved space twin drove me crazy with through the years. So thank you, Carrie. I love you.
My beloved space twin.
Yeah,
I like that. I like that.
And so he wrote those words when her passing was still fresh.
Yeah. So. And had he not been the appropriate one, he probably wouldn't have been there. Obviously, Billie Lourd, she is leading her mother's legacy and directing it as she sees fit. So the fact that Mark Hamill was up there on that stage tells you, I think, what not just Carrie Fisher thought of Mark, but what Billie Lourd thinks of Mark as well.
Yeah, she obviously thinks very highly of him. And Billie Lourd, she has a lot of good things to say about Star Wars fans as well. And she really soaked in a lot of the experiences going with her mom to conventions and then now going to conventions herself.
It's nice to hear people say nice things about Star Wars fans. You hear a lot of nasty things about Star Wars fans.
Just visually watching her interact with fans who were at the event in Hollywood, there was a warmth there. You could tell that was her comfort zone. It wasn't the media. It wasn't the PR people. It wasn't the cameramen. It was the fans that they had surrounding the curb there. So Billie got up and talked, and like I said, Carrie was definitely her mother's daughter. Well, the same thing goes for Billie Lourd. She's definitely a chip off the old block, and you'll hear some of Carrie's trademark humor live on in this kind of funny presentation from Billie.
Like most kids, I grew up thinking my mom was a little bit, a lot embarrassing. She tried to alter my opinion by showing me this cool movie she was in, Star Wars. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of it. I hadn't. She used to love to tell the story that every time she tried to put it on, I would roll my eyes and yell, "It's too loud, Mommy," or fearfully question, "Is that lady in the TV you?" It wasn't until middle school that I decided to watch it on my own accord. Not because I suddenly developed a keen interest in 70s sci-fi, but because boys started coming up to me and telling me they fantasized about my mom. You know what I'm saying?
Sorry about that, Billy.
My mom, the embarrassing lady that wore glitter makeup like it was lotion and didn't wear a bra to support her much support needed double Ds? They couldn't be talking about her. So I went home to investigate who this person was they were talking about. I finally watched the movie I had forever considered too loud and finally figured out what all the fuss was about the lady in the TV. I wanted to hate it so I could tell her how lame she was. Like any kid, I didn't want my mom to be hot or cool. She was my mom. But that day, staring at the screen, I realized no one is or will ever be as hot or as cool as Princess Leia.
She did a great job.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
She went on to talk about how she's very much a fan of Star Wars herself now, and she collects anything she sees with Leia on it. And really sweet, really sweet. And, Carrie passed away so suddenly, it's nice to have a little bit of a actual closure 6 years later. Having this nice little ceremony that we could all watch. And it's on YouTube if you want to check out the entire thing. It's great. It's fantastic.
I'm always amazed at how, in addition to the physical resemblance, sometimes the voice is passed down. And I was listening to Billy, and I noticed a lot of intonation and cadence that was really reminiscent of Carrie at that age. It's really something to hear.
No question.
Yeah,
no question.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. I am really looking forward to this. I couldn't believe when I saw this on the rundown. I was really excited. We've been talking about the Wilhelm Scream here at Rebel Force Radio since as long as we have been podcasting. I mean, Jimmy Mack is such a huge fan of the sound design behind A Galaxy Far, Far Away. Nobody, we talk about guys like Kyle Newman and our pal FJ and Paul Bateman, who all have these takes on the Star Wars universe that put them head and shoulders above. Paul Bateman understanding the visual language of Star Wars. Kyle Newman understanding the story, the how to write Star Wars. FJ DeSanto also certainly no slouch in that area. But Jimmy Mack is by far the expert when it comes to sound design in Star Wars. And there's so many iconic sound effects in Star Wars, but one of them is the famed Wilhelm Scream. And Jim, another chapter has been written in the history of the Wilhelm Scream as of recently.
Yeah, it's truly impressive. A discovery was made at USC in the archives, the very archives that Ben Burtt himself used to prowl around in. They found a recording of the original Wilhelm Scream recording session. It's just amazing that this thing still exists. It comes from a movie called Distant Drums, which was filmed in 1951.
This would have been the ADR session for this film, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
They were doing ADR as early as 1951. They certainly were. Distant Drums is one that had a legendary recording session because that's where the famous Wilhelm Scream came from. Jason, remind us what the Wilhelm Scream sounds like.
There it is.
The classic that we've been hearing in everything from TV to film to commercials to video games and beyond. The Wilhelm Scream was really made popular by Ben Burtt, but we'll get into that in a minute. Right now, the amazing thing is the Wilhelm Scream exists. Before we hear it, can we take a look at a clip?
Should we?
I gave you the clip of the very first Wilhelm Scream ever. It's from the film Distant Drums, 1951. This comes from a scene where some U.S. soldiers are walking through a swamp, and one of them gets bitten and dragged underwater by an alligator. And that's where the Wilhelm Scream comes from. So here it is, the very first Wilhelm Scream, 1951's Distant Drums. You see the soldiers walking through the water.
He's carrying a dame there. Oh, here's the alligator.
Gator underwater. There's Wilhelm.
Oh, he's fighting the gator. Is he putting up a good fight? I don't think it's going to go in the soldier's favor.
No.
Death roll.
The gator has engaged in the death roll.
Oh, no. Now there's more gators, and they're all...
Other gators are feasting on the corpse.
Oh. And then, of course, the
so there
the
it
lady,
is. That's Wilhelm.
Yeah, the lady puts her hands up to her cheeks. Oh! She recoils
God.
in horror. So that's where it all started. So that's where people...
That's where it all began.
Actually heard it for the very first time. But what makes this story so fascinating is they actually uncovered the actual audio session where the actor, because it wasn't the guy from the movie, was it? That was playing Sergeant Wilhelm?
I believe so, yes.
It is? Oh my gosh, okay.
That is the same actor, yes, whose name escapes me right now.
Because that's where it got its name, was the character in the film, the 1951 film, is Wilhelm. That's his name. So that's
Wilhelm.
Became the Wilhelm.
He can be heard. They call him that in dialogue. Come on, keep up with us, Wilhelm. Poor Wilhelm. And it's important to us as Star Wars fans because, of course, Ben Burtt placed a Wilhelm scream in each movie of the original trilogy. It was all over Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then it's just been this recurring theme throughout the history.
It's like an audio meme,
sound
you might call it, in a way.
We have a video of the very first Wilhelm scream in Star Wars. And so this happens in A New Hope during the laser battle right before Luke and Leia swing across the chasm in the Death Star. And so a trooper takes a blaster roll. And it's so distinctive, it jumps out at you. As a kid, you knew that was the stormtrooper scream.
Yes, that's exactly what I always called it in my head. I never heard Wilhelm scream until, many, many years later. I thought it was the stormtrooper scream, or the stormtrooper yell.
So Burtt started to slot it into films he was working on, and other sound designers started doing the same thing, and it was kind of just like an inside joke among them. A veteran audio engineer named Craig Smith, who is a graduate of USC's School of Cinematic Arts, is restoring a lot of audio that is in the USC archive. The same archive Ben Burtt found the Wilhelm scream all those years ago. He published a recording of the Wilhelm scream via a post on the Free Sound blog. I know you subscribe to the Free Sound.
Are you kidding
blog.
me? I check it every morning. Every morning. Yeah.
So, but I mean, he's doing all of this as a work of preservation. He's been working on the library of tapes that have been sitting at the USC Cinema School for decades. I guess they were originally transferred there in the early 90s. And before that, they were available. Ben Burtt had access to it wherever he was working. He was at USC. So, I got a question. He started doing it in student films. That's when he started actually doing it.
Not to put you, that was my question, not to put you on the spot. So it shows up in this 1951 film. And then Ben Burtt finds it. Did it appear in anything between the 1951 film
yes.
and Star Wars? Was it something that they kept using over and over in Hollywood?
Yes. And Ben would hear it.
Oh, okay.
And so he knew, he's like, they keep using this thing. There's a film called Charge at Feather River, which came out a few years after Distant Drums. Okay. And it's featured kind of prominently in that. That's the one where the guy takes the arrow into the leg as he's riding a horse. So let's get to it. Let's get to the meat. Let's get to the money here. This is the original recording session from the USC archive now being presented to you here digitally via Rebel Force Radio. It is the original 1951 recording session for the Wilhelm Scream. Take it away.
A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
I love the slate.
Okay, right. The first one you did up here was much better.
Go, Jim.
No, not an owl. A real scream of pain.
There it is.
There it is. Oh.
All right, yeah, at the end, he sort of ran out of gas. But that's it. That's the original
Man, that
Wilhelm
is
Scream.
That's even better than I imagined. I had not listened to this before the show. I love that there are now outtakes. There are outtakes for the Wilhelm Scream. It's incredible.
Yes. I love the slate from the producer at the beginning. He's like, man gets bitten by an alligator. Right. And then he's running through his different screams of pain. And the director says, no, it's not an owl. It's a... Can we hear it one more time?
Yeah, let's do it. This is priceless.
A man getting bit by an alligator and he screams.
And he screams.
Stood out towards me. Okay, right. The first one you did up here was much better. No, not an owl. A real scream of pain.
All right, that's good. All right, get out of here, kid.
I can't even do it. The guy, he's got amazing pitch. I tell you what.
Man gets bitten by an alligator and scream.
Yeah, he just the grizzled ADR guy there sitting there with his cigarette in his mouth. You just know. This guy.
You know that whole room it smelled like nothing but coffee and cigarettes and polyester. That's all you smelled in that room. Man gets bitten by an alligator and scream.
No, it's not an owl. What? You never been bitten by an alligator? It's not an owl. It's a scream.
Yeah, come on, you chucklehead. Don't you know what it sounds like to get bitten by an alligator? That's what it sounds like. That's what it sounds like. I talked to Ben Burtt about this years ago. This is right when the Wilhelm Scream was starting to become a thing. And I talked to Ben Burtt. This probably dates back to around 2011. And here's me and Ben Burtt, the master. I was thrilled to be within the presence of my idol, Ben Burtt. Look at this. I have his picture up here on my studio wall. I just pulled it off the wall.
Oh,
there
look at that.
Ben Burtt.
To Jimmy Mack. May the force of sound be with you.
Yes,
love it,
baby. And there he is with R2 because, of course, Ben created the voice of R2 with a synthesizer that had a microphone hooked up to it, and it's still in his studio at Skywalker Ranch, and I went there once and I played with it. There it is, right behind him.
Right there. There it is.
And see, he's got little sticker dots on there for the settings to mark them for R2. And when I was there, there was a piece of paper with Scotch tape over the right side, like covering up the
wait a minute, you got to play on that thing and make various R2 sounds?
I even used the microphone and did that. I did it all, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was really cool. And in Ben's studio, he has a glass case, and it has just like valuable things to him, like that arrow he's holding. That means something. And he has the scuba regulator that he used to create the Darth Vader breath. It's in this like trophy case. Yeah, what a thrill. I was very blessed to have that rare opportunity to hang out in Ben's studio a couple of times, actually.
Incredible.
But so here I'm talking to Ben, the man himself, about the Wilhelm Scream.
It's an inside joke that's now become public folklore.
Absolutely.
When I was growing up, I noticed this scream that repeated itself in many different films. And it was obviously a library effect of someone screaming that got its its use over and over again. And it was just a kind of a pet peeve of mine to recognize this sort of thing. When I was at USC Film School, another student and I, Richard Anderson, and in fact a third fellow named Rick Mitchell, we all recognized that we had all heard that scream growing up, and we all saw that it was in a movie called Charge at Feather River, a Western, in which a character named Wilhelm emits that scream when he gets shot with an arrow.
Yeah,
so
you can see the clip of that on YouTube.
Yeah, we called it the Wilhelm Scream, or the Wilhelm, amongst ourselves, and we put it in our student film. And then later, when Richard Anderson and I became became sound editors in the film industry, we started putting it in movies just as a one-upsmanship.
Right.
I put it in Star Wars. Richard would put it in Poltergeist. We both worked on Raiders, and we put it in Raiders of the Lost Ark. It became an in-joke between Richard and I for 25 years. No one paid any attention until, I suppose, the internet came along. You had enough people recognizing the sound that could talk to each other that it became, we were exposed.
Yeah.
And the joke was no longer an in-joke. It had come out of the closet, so to speak.
Exactly.
And so now we know it's proliferated beyond my control into TV shows and commercials and video games.
You name it.
I hear it all the time. So it got out of control. Yep. It belongs to the, it's in public domain basically now.
Yeah, right. So it's out of control.
It is out of control.
Yeah.
It's just like...
Do you wish you could take it back?
No, it's okay. I don't use it. I try not to put it in anymore because I feel like it's sustaining on its own. But it is sort of the original thing that went viral. Long before anything else went viral, the Wilhelm was the first bit of digital media to go viral. I can claim that.
Someone wrote a tribute song to the Wilhelm Scream called "That Calls for a Wilhelm Scream." Have you heard it? You have heard it. Yeah.
I've heard the song. I've seen T-shirts. I've gotten calls, letters, as if I created it. I didn't. It's an old sound effect from Distant Drums with Gary Cooper, 1950.
There it is. He got the name of the movie right there at the end because at first he attributes it to that Feather River or whatever it was.
Feather River.
Yeah. And then
maybe that's
at
where
the end
first...
he realizes that it was Distant Drums.
Yeah. I think he was just acknowledging them both because both of them do sort of claim ownership, but Distant Drums is the one that was the first, and it was the recording session specifically.
It's proved now.
For Distant Drums.
Yeah.
That piece of audio magic happened. Of course, Ben Burtt's heir apparent to Skywalker sound and the sounds of Star Wars is Matthew Wood, who's always been a friend of ours here on the show. And me and him talked about the Wilhelm Scream. I say it wasn't used, and I can't recall what the actual production is that I'm talking about. It could have been Red Tails, because I think this interview goes back to like 2008 or something. But we do talk about the Wilhelm Scream in this interview.
Something I did notice is I didn't hear the infamous Wilhelm Scream.
Right. Yeah, I think you might want to talk to Ben about that one, but he might be retiring it.
Yeah.
We'll see. I mean, it's out everywhere. I mean, everyone's got it. It's in every movie. And
it's been getting a lot of attention lately.
Yeah.
Before it was just kind of a industry inside joke.
Not anymore.
No, now it's all out there, and so the fun's probably over with that one. Huh?
Maybe that might. Ben. Well, there's another Scream that's going to be on the horizon here that we'll see, but we're not ready to talk about yet.
Okay, but it is like another from a vintage film or something?
Yeah, it's from something that it will be funny, but I'm not going to...
Oh, you're such a tease.
I'm a tease, yeah.
You're a tease.
Yeah.
Well,
it's in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull. But,
okay. And that's all you're going to say? Because you want to keep having fun with this one, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a new Wilhelm Scream out there.
I'm not going to be quoted saying that. But you're going to have to talk to Ben about that one.
Yeah, this was a mystery. I can't remember if this was this ever solved, because
no,
it wasn't solved because it was supposed to have.
Some people claim to have solved it. But I don't know.
Because, Jim, it started in Crystal Skull, and then it was in some of the was it in the sequel, Star Wars sequel films that it was supposed to have shown up?
Solo,
that's right.
So
is this really where the grudge with Solo originates? Is it all about this?
It might have it might have something to do with it. Might have something to do with it. I have a list a mile long of grudges with Solo.
But I know that you combed through every second of the audio of that film many, many times in search of a match to any of the screams heard in Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull.
I couldn't find a solid match. Not one that was good enough for me. There is this one scream. It happens when the ants are attacking the Nazis in Crystal Skull, and it happens in the speeder chase at the beginning of Solo when they're driving through that industrial area, and they're like workers diving out of the way, and stormtroopers. There's a scream there. But I've compared the two of them, and it didn't pass the test enough for me. And I even played with the pitches and everything. So I don't know, man. Some people claim they've discovered it, but their evidence didn't pass my sniff test. So it's still a mystery to me. And I'm kind of fatigued 15 years later now. Still thinking about this stupid sound. I'll break the code really one of these days.
I mean, to get the original audio from that ADR session with the actor and that director just makes it all worth the price of admission, right? Coaching, you can actually hear the direction that informed the Wilhelm Scream. I mean, that doesn't get much better than that. That's amazing. Amazing piece of film
Well, you
history.
know what? Can we hear the Wilhelm Scream one more time?
Absolutely.
Chewie, get us out of here!
All right, that's going to wrap things up for us this week on Rebel Force Radio. All right, that's going to wrap things up for us this week on Rebel Force Radio. Of course, we'll be following the news, the rumors, and the Rebel Force Radio hot gossip surrounding the new Star Wars films as they draw nearer. I want to thank our sponsors this week. The folks over at Ubisoft. Check out Assassins versus Templars. Also, Raycon and Factor. Supporters of us here at Rebel Force Radio, and we would love for you to be supporters of them. Speaking of supporting Rebel Force Radio, we'd love to have your support over on Patreon. You heard Jimmy Mack talking about it earlier in the program. Weekly full show video. If you got spoiled by seeing our beautiful faces throughout all of the after shows, well, hope is not lost. You can become an all-access member, and you can get full show video of the weekly podcasts, RFR Classic, as it is now back in rotation, the flagship show. You can see the full show video if you are a member of Patreon. In addition, you get exclusive podcasts that you can't get anywhere else, only at Rebel Force Radio on Patreon, and it really is truly a fantastic community of Star Wars fans. You hear from many of them on those after shows. If you're involved in the chats, you get to interact with them, and they don't disappoint. They're really, really a great group of folks, personally curated by Jimmy Mack and myself. You know, we don't let just anyone in.
Yeah, that's right.
The Rebel Force
jump through some hoops.
Absolutely, that's right.
Yeah.
Can't just accept anybody. Rebel Force
might have
Radio
to make a couple of deliveries for us, okay? Don't ask about what's in the package.
You know, things fall off trucks. It happens, okay? We'd love to have you hanging out with us over on YouTube. All of our after shows, all of our live shows, the call-in shows are all done over on YouTube. And the best way to find out if we're doing one of those is to like us over there, subscribe, and get those notifications. Just ring a little bell. And then every time we decide to go live, you'll get notified. And it's a heck of a lot of fun. We're going to be doing more of that stuff. Plus, Jimmy Mack was talking about, you know, having met Ben Burtt. We had Mark Hamill on earlier. There's so many interviews that Rebel Force Radio has captured with these Star Wars luminaries over the years. That's all available. So much of it is available at on the official Rebel Force Radio YouTube channel. So please check all that out. Again, subscribe, like, and comment today. Follow us on our social media channels at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Rebel Force Radio and at RFR Rebel Force. The official website for all things and everything Rebel Force Radio can be found at rebelforceradio.com. But if you really want to support us, if you really want to help us out, the number one thing you can do, and it costs you nothing, is just keep listening. Keep listening. Tell your friends about us, that Star Wars fan in the office that you talk to at the water cooler. Say, have you listened to Rebel Force Radio? Have you watched them on YouTube? Please do so. If you can subscribe, we love to have your subscription. If you can review the podcast, we'd love to have your reviews. Just one simple rule, please.
Make them good.
We're going to be back next week with more Rebel Force Radio and a very special one you do not want to miss next week, Rebel Force Radio. Until then, for RFR, I'm Jason.
I'm Jimmy Mack.
And remember,
The Force will be with you, always.
Rebel Force Radio.